If you're an entrepreneur looking to lower your taxes, should you set up your company in Dubai or the United States? In this video, I am comparing these two company structures, the Dubai Freezone company and the United States LLC, as someone who has been running actually both of these structures at the same time for over 2 years. So if there's someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to this, that is me, because I use both of these and there are pros and cons to both of them. In general, when you're an expat entrepreneur, where you live and where you set up your company do not have to be in the same place. But most people do not know all the factors to consider when it comes to where to actually set up your company. And if you haven't run one of these company structures before, you don't know the sort of hidden things and things you might not even think about if you haven't used them before. So in this video, I'm going to tell you all the things that you should be aware of before you use one of these companies. And in the conclusion, I will tell you when the US LLC makes most sense for you and when the UAE company makes most sense for you. So first, of course, we need to talk about the setup process as well as the cost. First, talking about Dubai. Generally, the setup process is extremely easy if you do it correctly, but if you don't do it correctly, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's certainly more things that can go wrong in the UAE company setup process than in the US LLC setup process, because you're working either directly with a free zone or with a service provider. But a lot of free zones are terrible and a lot of service providers are also terrible. There's so many cases where a company has been set up wrong. They've made one of the countless of mistakes that I talk about in this video right here that you're gonna watch after this video, where perhaps you set up your company, but because it's been done with the wrong business activity or something, you can't get banking for it. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So if you use the Dubai company, I highly recommend that you go with a reputable service provider that you absolutely trust. If you want my recommendation, obviously I'm going to recommend to you GenZone, the company that I partner with on this channel. Why do I partner with them? Because they don't have a single bad experience. Everyone who works with GenZone absolutely raves about their experience. You can read about people who have used them on the comments on my channel. You can look at their Trustpilot, you can look at their Google reviews. Not a single bad review, because they actually know what they're doing. You get direct access on WhatsApp directly to my partners who are absolute experts in this space. So it's not just a company setup process, it's a support service throughout your life of running a business in Dubai, the kind of service that I really wish I had when I came to Dubai. If you're interested in that service, you can book a free consultation in the first link down below in the description. When it comes to setting up a US LLC, it's a much more straightforward process. You just essentially pick the state they're going to set it up with. Usually you pick Wyoming or Delaware or something like that. You file it with the state. There's a couple of documents that you're going to get and you're going to have to sign, and that is that. However, still there are steps in that process that you should do research on. So if you don't want to do that yourself, actually at GenZone from now on, we actually do the US LLC setup also in-house. You get your LLC as well as your EIN number in just 48 hours, which is a faster service that I've ever seen from any other provider. And obviously you can expect the exact same experience with the US LLC setup from GenZone as hundreds and hundreds of people have also already got with our UAE setup service. In terms of the cost, they differ a lot. A UAE company setup is going to cost approximately $9,000 to $10,000, but our price is increasing slightly very soon because the service fee on that is actually very low, because what takes the bulk of that cost is the government fees with the free zone. It's just how it is. You will find some cheaper service providers that use some terrible free zone, or again, you get that terrible experience, but I absolutely don't recommend that. There's many horror stories of people using the wrong free zones. With the US LLC, with our service, the total cost is a flat $1,000 for the year. No extra fees, nothing extra, no hidden fees, nothing like that with either of these services. Those are the total prices. So obviously setting up the US LLC is going to be a much cheaper process. However, with that UAE company setup, included in that is going to be a residence visa for yourself in the UAE. If you just set up the company, it is going to be a bit cheaper than that. Then talking about the taxes. So obviously, first thing we need to talk about, wherever you actually manage your company from, no matter where you set up your company, wherever you actually manage and control that company from, aka where you as the founder actually live in most cases, or where your operations are, if you've outsourced it or something like that, that is going to be the country that is going to tax your company. So it doesn't matter if you set up a UAE company or a US LLC, but if you continue to live from Spain and run it from Spain, Spain is going to tax that company according to Spanish corporate tax laws. However, the difference with these companies is how the country of registration will tax them. So the UAE will tax all UAE registered, so UAE incorporated companies according to the UAE corporate tax law. Now, luckily, if your total revenue for your company is below 816,000 US dollars a year, you get a full exemption on the corporate tax. You pay 0% on all of your profits. And even if you're above that revenue threshold, the first around $105,000 of profit is taxed at 0%. So you only pay 9% tax above $105,000 a year in profit. With the US LLC, the benefit is that as long as you have no connection to the US, you have no what's called effectively connected income in the US, so no employees there, no contractors there, no warehouses there, you get fully 0% tax in the US because the LLC structure by US law is not treated as a taxable corporation. So in the case where you are above that small business threshold with your revenue, there is a slight advantage for the US LLC that you can only deal with taxes in the country where you actually live rather than having to deal with taxes in the US and that country at the same time. So in those cases, the US LLC most likely makes more sense. However, obviously, if you live in the UAE, then it's just going to be easier to run a UAE company because you need to, regardless, register these companies for corporate taxes, VAT, everything like that. We'll talk more about that later. And it's just going to be simpler to do that with a UAE company. I tried registering my US LLC in the UAE because I managed to control it from there, and it was a lot more of a difficult process. They want all these documents that they don't really yet understand how to register a foreign company. So if you live in Dubai in the UAE, in most cases, I recommend having a UAE company just for simplicity. But now talking about the residency. So a big reason, and probably the main reason to open a UAE company, is that with that company, you can directly get a work visa for yourself in the UAE. So if you want to relocate to the UAE, the primary and easiest way to do that is to set up a UAE company and just hire yourself. And it doesn't even matter what salary you pay, nothing like that. You can personally live in the UAE and take advantage of their zero personal tax, zero capital gains tax, zero dividend tax, everything like that. Whereas with the US LLC, there is no path to residency in the US or obviously in any other country for that matter. So if you set up a US LLC, you need to figure out your personal residency in some other way. So simply, if you want to live in the UAE, again, it makes a lot more sense to set up a UAE company because it's easier to use that to get the visa. Whereas if you want to live somewhere else, perhaps the US LLC makes more sense. Another big consideration is going to be banking and payment processing. So with the UAE company, especially if you're a new business and you don't have any kind of physical office, most likely you're going to use WEO banking. So WEO business bank account. That's what most business owners in the UAE use. It's an excellent bank account. You just manage it directly from your phone, or you can also use it from your computer. They don't have physical branches, but it is still a real legitimate bank. Some people say that, oh, it's not trustworthy because it's not a real bank. Yes, it is a real bank. They just don't have physical offices. If, however, you have a physical office or like for some physical substance in the UAE, you can also obviously open traditional bank accounts like Emirates NBD, Rock Bank, First Abu Dhabi Bank, pretty much any bank that you might want. Although for my needs and for most people's needs, I haven't really had any need for this because WEO Business has everything that you need. With the US LLC, if you're not a US resident, which probably you are not going to be if you're watching this video, then most likely all you're going to get access to is an EMI, so like a digital bank like Mercury, for example. Mercury is what I use for myself for both of my US LLCs because I run two US LLCs for two separate businesses. Now, this one is not a real bank, so if you're looking for a real bank, if that is something that's important to you for some reason, with the US LLC, it's at least going to be a bit more difficult to get that. Whereas with a UAE company, because it's more of a real company, you are going to be able to get real banking for your business if that is important. In terms of payment processing, however, this is a big reason to actually use the US LLC, because the thing with the UAE company, like I mentioned in a bunch of videos if you watch this channel regularly, is that a lot of payments, if you're taking payments from via, for example, Stripe, from customers in the US or Europe or something like that, are going to be declined because for some reason US credit cards don't like to be charged from companies outside of the US. That's just what the US is like. They don't understand anything about outside of the US. So if you're especially selling to the US or to one of these Western countries, it's a much better idea to have a US LLC because the company will essentially pay for itself just in a couple of payments that are gonna go through instead of being declined when using the US LLC. And this is actually the reason why, despite living in the UAE and having a UAE company, I also have a US LLC for that payment processing. Now, a big consideration as well, obviously, is going to be compliance. What sort of filings, etc., are you going to have to do for these companies? So it's very light actually for both of these structures. With a UAE company, primarily you have two things to worry about. Those are going to be corporate tax and VAT. So regardless of what company you run and whether you actually have to pay corporate tax, you do have to register for corporate tax and you do have to file corporate taxes. I'm going to have tutorials for both of those on this channel. It's very, very easy to do. It takes like 5 minutes to do something like that. Not something to worry about at all. And you also have to register for VAT, what I call taxable supplies of more than 375,000 dirhams, or roughly like $105,000 in a given year. And whether you have to charge VAT will depend on where you sell. Within the UAE, you have to charge 5% VAT. If you sell outside of the UAE, you don't have to charge VAT, but you still have to register for it if you're earning direct revenue via your company. With the US LLC, there's basically a couple of filings that you're going to do to the IRS and to the state every single year. Again, nothing difficult if you use our service. We'll just essentially send these forms to you. We'll tell you, okay, here's exactly how you file it. You just file it. It takes like 10 minutes and it's submitted, and that is that. It takes like maybe 20-30 minutes of work per year to keep this LLC completely compliant. Not a big deal or anything like that for either of these companies. And again, even if you have the US LLC, but you live in the UAE, you're still going to have to do these filings in the US, and you'll also have to do them in the UAE if this company is managed and controlled from the UAE. So that is also important to understand. So as a conclusion, so first of all, both of these are great options in most cases, but just to simplify this, you should probably set up a US LLC if you don't live in Dubai and you don't have any plans on getting residency in the UAE, and or if you use direct payment processing, especially if you process payments from US customers. However, you should probably set up a Dubai company if you want to live in Dubai or just get a residence permit in Dubai. And if not, if you're going to be under that $816,000 small business threshold limit and you don't need payment processing. If you're going to be living in Dubai and you need payment processing, unless you're getting a golden visa or something like that, you should probably set up both a UAE company, and then you're going to have the UAE company either own the LLC or you can own both of them personally. A lot of our clients have this set up. I personally have this set up. If you want to set it up in this way, or if you're not sure which one you should set up and what makes sense for your particular situation, I highly recommend that you at least book that free consultation down below, because you can explain your particular situation and we can recommend to you exactly what setup makes most sense. So this is just general advice, but if you want specific, you can book that free consultation. It's no strings attached. Like if you don't want to use the service after the call, like there's no problem there. We only want to help clients where we are the absolute best option for them. However, there is also obviously the option that you have a US LLC as your only company and you don't have a UAE company, but you get residency in the UAE via something like the golden visa. So if you're interested in the golden visa in the UAE, which gives you a 10-year residence permit rather than a 2-year residence permit like you get with the company, you can watch this video right here. So definitely watch this video next, and I'll see you on the next one.